some people getting the refreshments, I'll let them finish. All right, welcome everybody to FPEC 2019. For those who don't know me, my name is Phong Nguyen, and I'm your moderator for this afternoon. A little bit about me. I've been a resident of Fairfax County since 1975. I think one other person who's been here that long is Arthur Purvis. I don't know if anybody's here longer than 1975. Oh, wow! That's awesome. All right.
1956.
All right. So, my wife, Tu Hong, she's a physician. She works at the State Department. We have two children. Our oldest, Minh Quan, he graduated from Thomas Jefferson High School in 2017, and he's now an engineering student at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, majoring in naval architecture, marine engineering. Our younger son, Minh Vien, he's a 6th grader at Mantua Elementary School. And so me, I earned my BS in electrical engineering from George Washington University. After working for the Naval Research Lab, I decided, for 4 years, I decided to change my career and went to law school. And I earned my JD from the George Mason University School of Law. And finally, I earned all my white hair from 25 years of practicing law. All right, so a little bit about the format for this afternoon's conference. There will be, after each presentation, there will be an opportunity for question and answers. But we can only take a few questions due to limited time that we have. But we do have a list of the speaker's email address. So you're welcome to take a sheet home. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact the speakers and have your questions answered. Yeah, in case I need it, but I don't know. Okay, so we're going to change the order of the presentation a little bit just because we start a little late. So the first presentation will be, now I need to have that agenda. That will be number 3. All right. So the first topic would be school boards, core educational performances to be presented by Chad Brown. Chad is a product of the state of Georgia's public education system. For the past 7 years, he has worked in varying roles in politics in 11 different states. Most recently, he returned to Virginia for the 3rd time in his career to represent Greg Nelson as his campaign manager. Chad will share with us how well our children are doing in schools.
Hey, can you use the mic? Can the mic be used?
No, I think I'll be all right.
No, we can't hear.
Oh, no.
I'm sure you're fine.
All right, is that better for everybody?
It's not on. Is it?
This is like rock and roll, man. My ears
No,
are...
it's anyways, so first and foremost, I would like to thank Phong and his wife Tu Hong, for organizing this entire event. Obviously, Vincent for opening up his beautiful home to everybody. So about 2 weeks, absolutely. So about 2 weeks ago, Phong had approached me and he wanted a little bit more insight about the SOL scores in Fairfax County and how they compared with the rest of the state. So we decided on ultimately Algebra 1, Earth Science, English Reading, and English Writing, just your regular, kind of core subjects. We wanted to take into consideration every single high school within Fairfax County and how they're performing with each one of those. And by looking at that, it does 2 things. It shows, 1, how well our schools are doing, or if they're not doing well. Two, it also gives us a good indication of how well we're preparing our students for when they go off to college or to other educational fields or just progressing in life. So ultimately what we found was that as you can tell in Algebra 1, or actually all across the board, we outperformed the state very, very well and on a very consistent basis. We tested from 2013 through 2018, so we had about a 5-year window of what we were looking at. So, obviously, the biggest, margin right there, the one on the right is pass advance, and this one is pass rate. So, as you can tell, we had a very strong showing right there with English writing. However, if you take a gander over to the pass rate for Algebra 1, we're kind of right on par. And that's something that is obviously going to be needs addressing. One of the good things, though, about Fairfax County, which is not true throughout the state, is that they start teaching Algebra 1 in middle school. Some counties, they don't do that. They just wait until high school, which kind of eludes me of why, but whatever that may be. So that is something that we definitely have to take a look at. If we click over to, I believe it's English reading, was one of the ones that also took, that we have to look at and be a little wary of. But if we scroll down to the bottom.
I don't know how to operate your computer.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry. All right.
You might want to hide the dog before he gets
So, we see right here in these past 2 years, so this was 17 and 18, and then this was 16 and 17 for the pass advance. So we saw a massive dip right there. Obviously, a few years ago we were at 7.52%, and then now we're only at 2.8. Again, that is definitely something that we're going to have to address, because if we keep trending in that direction, we're going to be well below the state average within a couple of years. And as we all know, English reading is very, very important. Ultimately, what we did kind of conclude is that with all of this testing, Fairfax County is actually performing very, very well. But with that being said, we cannot rest on our laurels. We can't just pretend like this trend's going to keep going. We have to have a strong showing. We have to continue to make sure that our kids are educated, because at the end of the day, they are the future of not just this county, but our country and our state. With that, does anybody have any questions? I'll be also more than happy to send this to anybody. I know there's a ton of numbers on there and might be a little bit confusing. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I taught in Loudoun County schools 30 years. And we often used to wonder why Fairfax scores were so good, and we thought, because we used to send our students to Fairfax County schools, to teach Thomas Jefferson.
Right, yeah, Thomas Jefferson.
Brought them from all over the state or the area. If you took out the Thomas Jefferson scores, what would happen to the average, do you think? Because Thomas Jefferson, the magnet school,
you contributed
actually
to that.
Right.
inflates these numbers.
It most certainly does. Obviously, Thomas Jefferson is, they have a very strong, STEM program, which is pretty much one of the best in the state. Now, with first and foremost, I'll answer your question in 2 parts. One part being is when we calculated the state average, we also included all of the other, magnet schools and charter schools within the state. So that does take that into consideration. Now, if we did take out Thomas Jefferson, and I think we can I'll do it right here quickly on just English writing. As we can see, go through that, knock it out, and we're still above average.
Wonderful.
So even just omitting them at, as a total, we're still above average. Obviously, this is English writing. We can cycle, through all of them. But again, like I said before, it is when we did do the state average, I kept in all of the charter schools throughout the state to kind of help balance it out. Yes, sir.
When we talk about the averages, have you done a national comparison or any international comparison?
Well,
See, the state is not doing great. We know that. I mean,
Right.
Virginia is.
So above average to compare to what? Yeah.
So
Yeah, but, yeah.
I have not done a national average, compared, Virginia to other states. That was, I most certainly can. That would, again, take, a few more hours, like took me about 10 to 12.
My goodness.
So,
Thank you for doing it.
oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
So if, that is something we can do, obviously just, shoot me an email of exactly
Sure.
what you want, and I can put that together for you, no problem.
Just to answer Freddie's question about average
Yeah,
compared to what?
if the state's doing so badly,
Right.
if we're above average, just like.
I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. And so his comparison is for with the state of Virginia. So we leave it at that.
Okay.
But I'd like to ask Arthur to comment on this issue. The pass advance score rate versus pass rate for the four basic classes. And after this, Arthur is going to address the issue of wasteful spending.
I should probably use Vincent's laptop,
Okay.
because I don't think I'll finish right before you leave. So my drive, I think my drive is there, if you can eject it and let me,
Yeah, I actually put it right here on Vincent's computer for you.
oh, okay.
Arthur, do you feel that this is appropriate time for you to
Well,
come in and
It's,
share?
yeah, it's easy. So in the state standards of learning tests, and in order to graduate, get a Virginia diploma, students have to pass a certain number of these tests. There are two passing thresholds. One is pass proficient, and the other is pass advanced. Pass proficient means you have to do pass proficient in order to get a D. D is passing. So pass proficient is a very low standard. Pass advanced, you have to get a much higher score, and I think that's a better indicator of college and career preparedness than the pass proficient. Somebody down in Richmond years ago told me that when the SOLs were new, pass proficient was originally pass barely proficient, and then somebody decided to drop the word barely.
Anyway, so Chad, if you can go back to your very first slide, I guess, that has a summary of the yes. So just kind of question this. I want to pose a question to Arthur. So we use the four basic classes: Algebra 1, reading, writing, and earth science. So the column on the left here would be pass advance, right?
Yes, yeah, the one on the right and the one on the left is pass rate.
So it seems like the one on the right has a higher rate than the one on the left, which represents the pass advance. So we can see, based on what Arthur was saying, that to do well in college or to be prepared for college, we're looking at this score, not this. So this is basically just barely passing. So you see a huge number here, and according to Arthur, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have any significance. This has significance.
Wow.
These. So you look at the number at with single digit and just two digits. It's very depressing.
The big numbers like the
So for Virginia school, for schools to be accredited in Virginia, the students have to achieve the pass barely proficient threshold.
That's barely efficient.
It's a low standard.
All right. So yes, we do relatively better than the rest of the state, but we still doing very poorly. If you look at these scores, and they're on the left.
Does it mean that it doesn't even meet the minimum requirement for like a freshman course in college, or the column on the right side?
Well, I don't know how this compares to college level,
Okay.
but these are basic high school classes. And we talk about basic writing, reading, earth science. They are basic courses. And if we can see, from the scores, the passing rate very, very low.
I'll actually be addressing that.
Yeah, that's
All right, so,
statistics. He will show you.
Chad, is there anything else you'd like to add to your presentation? Anybody else who has any?
Yeah, anybody else
questions?
initially have any questions? Okay, perfect. If anybody would like, that spreadsheet, you can obviously email myself. I know Fong has put together like a good email list. Just shoot me an email. I'll happily send it over to you. And then if you have any questions with it, I'll also be more than happy to answer them. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, what was your name again?
My name? Chad Brown.
Chad Brown. Are you on Facebook, Chad?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
I'll find you there.
Looking forward to
And I'll meet you in the future.
it.
I'm
Okay.
doing an educational event. So,
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah,
in
absolutely.
June, so
Absolutely,
Chad
yeah.
Brown.
He needs a job.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Chad.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, so our second topic is the school board's wasteful spending. And Arthur Purvis is going to talk about that. Arthur and his wife, Carol, have lived in Vienna for 43 years. They have two children, Alida, who graduated from Thomas Jefferson again, 1994, and Spencer, who graduated from Marshall in 1996. He served 2 terms on the FCPS Family Life Education Advisory Committee from 1991 to 1992, and from 2002 to 2003. He has run for office 7 times, most recently as the 2015 Republican candidate for chairman of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, where he spent only $17,000 but won 34% of the vote. That's a big accomplishment. He has been the president of the Fairfax County Taxpayers Alliance since 1996, and he is a retired computer programmer. And Arthur will inform us about the school board's wasteful spending.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fong. I have 7 slides I want to try to get through in 10 minutes. So, next slide, please. So the first few slides, I want to make the point that we're funding the schools generously. So what this slide shows is that since 2000, household income increased, if you extrapolate out, maybe about 55% or so, and is barely keeping up with inflation. Meanwhile, real estate taxes for the typical Fairfax County household have gone up about 3 times faster than household income. And that has 2 messages, I think. One of them, that the county budget is out of control. And 2, this is a potential drag on the Fairfax County economy. So half of the county's revenue comes from real estate taxes, a little more than half, and about half of the county's revenue goes to the public school system. So let's look at the public school system. Next slide. Okay, so this is the funding of the Fairfax County Public Schools. So since 2000, Fairfax County Public School enrollment increased 24%, spending increased 122%. So that's 5 times more, about. And staff has increased faster than enrollment. And even if you adjust the school spending for inflation, it still has an inflation-adjusted school spending has increased 45%, which is almost twice as fast as enrollment has increased. So you recall, household income on the previous slide was barely keeping up with inflation. Their budget has gone twice as fast. So now, the school budget, 90% of the school budget goes to raises and benefits. So let's take a look at that.
90%.
So what we want to do is we want to see if school spending for raises and pensions and health care, those are the big items, have they been keeping up with the increase in staff and the increase in enrollment? Okay? So as I just showed you, since 2000, enrollment increased 24% and staff increased 27%. Spending on salaries increased 107%. And spending on pensions increased 287%, and spending on health insurance increased 353%. So I think we can say that, yeah, funding has kept up with the increase in staff and increase in enrollment. That's an understatement, isn't it? And also, what we're looking at here is a picture of pension and health insurance spending out of control. Out of control. This is more than what? More than 10 times, increased more than 10 times faster than staff. This is 10 times faster, okay? Maybe that's 15 times faster, out of control. I'm not saying that salary growth is out of control. Now, what happens if you adjust this for inflation? So let's adjust it for inflation. Next slide, okay? So, salary spending, inflation-adjusted salary spending increased 35%, increased 30% more than the increase in staff. So, real salaries did go up. And even when you adjusted pension spending for inflation, it still has increased, what, 5 times, 7, 8 times faster, more than staff. And insurance spending has also, even inflation-adjusted insurance spending has gone up much faster than staff and enrollment. Again, I'm just trying to build the case that we have invested a lot of money in the school system. Now, this isn't the full story though, because a large percentage increase can actually be a small dollar increase if it's a small budget item, and a small percentage increase can be a large dollar increase if it's a large dollar item. So we need to look at the dollars here. Next slide, please. There we go. So, since in 2000, they're spending, the schools, this is the school system, was spending $56 million on health insurance, and now they're spending $254 million. Pensions, they were spending $105 million, now they're spending $408 million. And salaries, so although the percentage increase in salaries was less than the percentage increase in these two, the dollar amounts are much more. That's what, that's an $850 million increase. And these increases here represent $1 billion. And the school budget is $3 billion. How am I doing here?
Fantastic. Yes.
Okay.
What is the government representative saying about those numbers of pensions going up in relative to growth of the staff and I guess attendance?
Well, I don't know what they're saying, but what have they done? And the answer
Is it? Well, they'll say maybe it's not true because maybe you're adding it this way, or
no, the pension has a big unfunded liability, and so they've increased the employer contributions each year to try to reduce the unfunded liability.
I see.
Okay, but next question is, what are we getting in return? Now, hang on to your chairs. This next slide is
I have one question now. One
next slide is pretty busy. Yes, sir.
So when they were thinking of increasing the staff, were they projecting growth in student enrollment? Is that why they, hired, or was there a rationale behind why they were focusing a lot more on staffing?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the rationale is for increasing. I mean, staffing did pretty much track in enrollment, right? Staff increased 27%, where enrollment increased 24%.
Okay.
Yeah, here, yeah. I mean, those are pretty close.
Unless they die.
Okay, so hang on to your chairs. Next slide, please.
I think after 5 years.
Okay, let's see if we can make sense of this. So the question is what are we getting in return for $3 billion a year? So this is a list of all high schools, and then this is the Fairfax County district-wide, and then all of Virginia and the USA. So in last year, 2017-2018 school year, there were 13,800 Fairfax County seniors. Okay. 9,856 took the SAT. The average SAT score for Fairfax County was 1212. The average SAT score for Virginia was 1117. The average SAT score for the United States was 1068. So Fairfax County, for the 2020 budget, the enrollment is actually going down, but they want $117 million more to teach fewer students. And their justification is, we're excellent. Because, and you know, when you look at their budget document, it's like 200 pages, and they have like one paragraph maintaining that they're an excellent school system, and they cite this number, and they say, we're excellent because we're so much better than Virginia and the nation, which is a true statement. But what does 1212 really mean? Does that mean you can be an engineer or a lawyer, or does it mean, is it a low standard? And now, you've all familiar with the SAT, there's another college admissions test called the ACT, okay? And 4,136 students of the 13,000, right, took the ACT. The ACT reports a very interesting statistic. They tell you what percentage of the students tested are prepared for college-level STEM courses. And the Fairfax County average for the 4,000 students was 55%. 55% of the students tested were prepared for college-level STEM courses, according to the ACT. And notice how it varies from high school to high school. Thomas Jefferson, 100% were prepared, and down here at Mount Vernon, 18% were prepared. So the quality of high school varies dramatically, right? Although a lot of them cluster around the average here. But question. Supposing you administered the ACT to all 13,000 students, then how many would be prepared for college-level STEM courses? Is that a fair question? Yes. Everybody still awake? Okay. Well, you can kind of approximate that by looking at the Algebra 1 Standards of Learning test. Because everybody, well, 15,927 students took the Algebra 1 Standards of Learning test. And now I have a, well, I'll wait till somebody asks the question, okay? So this is a pretty, it tested the whole population, right? Instead of just a quarter of it, right? And now, in the Algebra 1 Standards of Learning test, remember we talked about there's two passing percentages, you know, the percent that passed barely proficient, which is, I feel, kind of meaningless in terms of college and career preparedness, and the percent that passed at the advanced level, which was 21%. So I maintain that this is a pretty good indicator of what percentage of our students are prepared for college-level STEM courses or STEM careers. So for $3 billion a year, 21% of our students are prepared to compete in the global economic IT market, in the information age. And to me, that's the big waste, okay? And again, notice how this percentage varies dramatically from school to school. And the reason is the lower performing schools have a higher percentage of African Americans and Hispanics. So let's go to the next slide. And you can see it here. These are the Algebra 1 SOL results by ethnic group. And well, I don't have the percentages. This is the percent that passed. And then this is the percent that passed at the advanced level. And so you can see the big gap between white and Asian and black and Hispanic. And for 30 years or more, since the 1980s, the school board made the school board always talks about equity, their equity this, their equity that. For 30 years, they've had a professed goal to close this gap. They've never done it. They've never done it. They have denied these people an education. Now, look at this. This is the 4th grade SOL results. They test every year, okay? These are the 4th grade SOL results for the math test. You see the same gaps. In other words, this gap that we see among seniors, it's there in the 4th grade. What does that mean? What are you supposed to do before 4th grade? You're supposed to teach reading and arithmetic. They're not. Their curriculum does not work, okay? So the problem, the reason for the low achievement is the failure to teach disadvantaged students. That failure is apparent in the 4th grade. The schools are failing to adequately teach reading and arithmetic in early elementary school, and then students are handicapped for the rest of their school career, if not their life. Now, I maintain there's a solution. And the solution, so the way they try to solve the solution is spend more money, hire more staff. In 1975, there were 11.8 students per employee. Today, there's 7.7 students per employee. If today we had 11.8 students per employee, there would be 17,000 employees instead of 24,000 school employees. That was a lot of numbers. Did anybody follow that?
No.
I'll just say the same thing one more time. In 1975, they had more students per employee than they have today. Got that?
Yes.
Okay. If they had the same number of students per employee today as they had in 1975, the school system would have 7,000 fewer employees.
That's a lot of
We
employees.
got it now? I'm glad I asked the question.
Yeah.
And that's $1 billion. You know, 7,000 employees is about $1 billion. Okay? And it doesn't solve they try spending more money, they try hiring more employees, and they do fads. And so the newest fad is FCPS On, where they want to give a laptop to every high school student. Okay? $4 million, a new fee for parents. Parents have, but if you have a free and reduced lunch child, then the fee is lower, so administration has to track all that. It will not change those. Okay, their fads never do. What they have to do is they have to use curricula, and this is my last slide, I'm done with this final statement. They have to fix their curriculum, which they refuse to do. And there are curriculum that will teach all children, disadvantaged and affluent, reading and arithmetic. And one of them is Montessori. Raise your hand if you've heard of Montessori. Okay, Maria Montessori designed her curriculum for children who lived in the slums of Rome, and they did great on standardized tests. The irony of it is today the only kids who get Montessori are rich kids. But it makes an important point. Good teaching for disadvantaged kids is good teaching for rich kids. Good teaching is good teaching. And then the other, I can talk a lot about it, but I'm just going to mention the name, is NISTAR, which was tested in something called Project Follow Through. You can Google it up. One of the persons who implemented it and got something of national representation was a black elementary school principal in Houston who made this statement, and I'd like to end with this. It's a myth that if you're born in a poor community and your skin is a certain color, that you can't achieve on a higher level. But the school board has no motivation to improve achievement. They'll let the the kid. We're pouring money into $3 billion a year into a school system that perpetuates poverty and perpetuates class differences.
I have a couple of questions for you. I'll leave it to our audience first to ask some questions.
One question. When you look at these numbers, the racial differences, is it available or is it possible for us to have a similar statistics based on the family setup? Like two-parent household versus single-parent household. Is it possible to come up with something like that?
No, I got these numbers from the Virginia Department of Education SOL results. Oh, wait a minute. They do have a category there for disadvantaged students, which would sort of be a surrogate of that. So I think that, yeah, we might be able to.
Because when we say this, it looks racial and
that might be
stuff, but
possible.
if you focus on the family setup, I think this statistics will reflect just like that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The successful students are the ones who are taught at home, right? Because it's not taught in the classroom. So, the parents who can send their children to tutors or after school programs, those are the students who will do well. They don't teach it in the classroom. Their curriculum is so sophisticated, it doesn't teach anything. It is truly an incarnation of the emperor's new clothes. Is that it?
I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So, you and I together looked at the proposed budget for 2020. So there's one item there kind of struck us, and that's the average salary for the teachers.
Thank you.
I wonder if you have any more thought about that, because we always heard about teachers being underpaid. Tell them.
Okay, so the average salary of teachers in 2014, Fairfax County teachers was $67,000 a year. Anybody want to guess what the average salary is now? 77,000. And next year, if the budget goes through, it'll be 80,000. Teachers have gotten 6% raises for the last 2 years, and they'll get another 6% raise next year if the budget goes through. which-
Now, when you say 77, is that kind of separate from like health benefits?
That's right. That is just
Which is
straight
money
salary.
Pure salary.
In addition, so the cost of benefits is 48% of salary. Or so when you add the cost of benefits, half of 77,000 is what, about 40, a little less than 40,000.
So really 120, 110, 120,000 you
Yeah.
make.
And can you elaborate on the pensions, the current pension system in Fairfax County?
You can, yeah, so you can retire at age 50, if you've worked 30 years, you can retire at age 55 with 75% of your salary.
55?
At age
I'm
55.
almost on that word.
Oh, and I have one final comment. Seville, my family moved here in 1953. Okay, anything else?
So that's for 9 months salary or for the 12 months?
9 months.
9 months or 12 months?
9 months. 9 months.
9 months.
The
9
salary-
months salary, not 12
Yeah,
months.
29 for a year.
He said 9 months salary?
Yeah.
Is it?
Oh, yeah,
Nine
yeah, the normal contract is
9 months.
9 months, yeah.
Not really.
Oh.
We
Okay.
finished mid-June to third week of June. You go back on the second week of August. That really only gives you a total of July off. And most of the time, like I did, we take graduate classes for our recertification. And also remember, teaching is not a 9 to 5 job. I would sometimes stay at school till 9, 10 if we had meetings. Did paperwork till 2, I was still up by 6 and out the door by 6:35 every morning. I rarely got home before 5 o'clock.
I stand corrected, thank you. But wouldn't it be nice if we did away with those certification requirements?
Yeah. It-
Then the certificate, as far as
I don't know, I would have loved not to have to take
As
classes
far as-
nonstop, but yeah.
I just wonder if those certification requirements is job security for graduate schools of education.
Probably.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And then you talked about doing all that administrative work, a lot of which is unnecessary and just mandated by federal government regulations and so forth. So your hours could have been a lot more reasonable, you could have had a lot more time.
There's no time, it's too much paperwork.
Yeah, yeah. And it's worse now. Of those extra 7,000 employees, a lot of them are administrators and they have to, but not all, okay, not even most. But administrators have to justify their existence by putting more burdens on teachers. And,
Shuffling papers.
yeah, there's a lot of wasted time, sure. What this lady
I
here?
have a question. Do you have a breakdown of all the staff, like from teachers
Oh, yeah.
to support staff?
You can see it. If you go to, just Google FCTS FY 2020 budget.
Okay.
The budget document is very informative, and at the end of it, they have a detailed breakdown of the revenue, detailed breakdown of their expenditures, and a detailed breakdown of all the staff.
Great.
How many elementary school teachers, middle school teachers, special ed teachers.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Freddie?
Yeah, this information is super informative to the ordinary parent. Would you be willing to maybe share this as some candidates who are willing to support to stop this mess?
Yeah, of course, candidates are in a tough situation. So I've been president of the Taxpayers Alliance for over 20 years, and I believe this is a true statement. At that time, a Republican school board member and a Republican supervisor has never made a motion to eliminate a tax hike. And I'll tell you why. All the money for the tax hikes are for the raises and benefits. And you have to take on the unions, which I did in 2015. The flip side of it, which I didn't talk about here, but I do, and I do have another file there. Can I show 2 more slides?
Sure. This is your presentation.
Well, but
While he's doing that, let me just
So the Board
add
of
to
Supervisors
what he
don't
was
teach
saying
us
about FCPS on the computer initiative, one-to-one laptop, 2019, 2020, for all the high schools in Fairfax County, each student will get a laptop. Now, there's
Is that a done deal?
There's a $50 user fee. However, reduced lunch students will pay $25, and guess free lunch student, how much they will pay?
Nothing.
How much will I pay?
0. They don't pay anything.
Triple that.
All right, so that's what we're looking at, but then that doesn't stop there. The following year is going to be free, it's going to be one-to-one for all the middle school. And then a year after that, it's going to be one-to-one for all the elementary schools. So look at.
and didn't we read that they're going to have to hire 18 more staff?
Oh yeah, definitely, in order to support that program. So it's going to be 18 more staff, employees. You have to pay them salaries, you have to pay them training, and also, all the parts, computers, and the facilities to support, the program. Because anything that needs to be repaired will be repaired for free. The student will take them back. The school will take care of that
For free.
and for free. Wow. And they will get a new computer if it's not fixed on time. So.
Has anybody ever seen this map before? Okay, so this is from a website called How Money Walks. And what it does is it visualizes data collected by our friends at the Internal Revenue Service who monitor the migration of taxpayers from state to state. Now does it begin to make sense? The red states are losing net taxpayer wealth. Wealth is migrating from the red states to the green states. Virginia, by the way, used to be green. Okay? Well, the IRS also monitors this not only at the state level, but at the county level.
Oh, no.
Wow. So here are all the counties in Virginia. See that big red county up there?
That's us.
That's us.
There I am.
Well, let me flip. Skip that. Okay, now this will be my last slide. Okay, but this is kind of interesting. When you think of the quality of life in Fairfax County, what do you think of?
Great.
Puppy dogs.
What I'm looking for is parks and libraries. Parks and libraries. So parks and libraries get somewhere between 5 and 10% of the whole county budget. Okay. So in 2000, Parks Authority had about 375 employees, and today that's gone down to maybe 325 employees. In 2000, libraries had maybe 425 employees, and today that's gone down to 360, something like that. Okay, so they've been cutting the two areas that most people associate with county quality of life. Now then there's a division called self-sufficiency. Anybody want to guess what the division of self-sufficiency processes? Welfare applications. Okay, sort of Orwellian term. And so in 2000, self-sufficiency was way smaller, had much less staff than libraries and parks, but now it has more staff than libraries and parks, which is just an indication that the county is, indirect evidence that the county is getting.
That's why there's bodies being found in the parks.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, so that's our next topic, and our next speaker is Chris Wright. He is an independent libertarian activist who travels in Tea Party and libertarian circles. Anti-communism is one of his main areas of focus. He started Anti-Communism Action Team. The acronym is ACAT, to counter the communist influence here and abroad. ACAT's Speakers Bureau has been on the radio in several states, in front of classrooms and groups, and at the Leadership Institute Training Academy. And Chris will talk about communist and socialist influence in our schools. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Fong. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about ACAT at the beginning here. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to send around handouts and sign-up sheets.
Just do that for lunch. Let's do that.
It's only As Fong mentioned, we're an independent grassroots group. Our mission is to counter communist influence around the abroad. We have a speakers bureau available. We have both survivors of communism and we now have subject matter experts. And we can present here in the area in person. If you're outside the area, like Charlottesville, Virginia, at the UVA, we can present either by teleconference, or video conference. I'd like to introduce one of our speakers, Truth Brown. She's been with us from the beginning and has spoken many times on the radio and at our other programs. So, round of applause for Truth. Thank you. If you sign up for our mailing list, you'll get a weekly roundup of anti-communism news. And our website is on the pink sheet that's going around. It's Spider and the Fly, with dashes between the names. And if you'd like to get in touch, the mailing list is at mail@spiderandthefly.com. Now, as I begin my presentation, both Arthur and Chad expressed dissatisfaction with Fairfax County's standardized test scores. So ask yourself this question as I'm making my presentation. Is there a connection between the low test scores and the material I'm about to present? I might suggest to you that there is. Now the material I have for you can be found in more detail on ACAT's video page. There's a video there called Producing Auto Warm Beers. Truth's in it. And it's on the video page of our website. So I'm going to go through the material. Then I'm going to circle back to policy statements from the FCPS, Fairfax County Public Schools, and finish with suggestions for school board races. In our video, we level the charge that American education has been taken over by the left, but don't take my word for it. A young elementary school teacher called into a radio talk show at around the time we were doing this video, which is about a year and a half ago now. He said that liberals are in complete control of education where he lives. He sees young people buying into liberal philosophy because it's all they've been exposed to. A lot of his kids think they are victims, that somehow America has been unfair to them. So the schools are not only failing to educate, they are deliberately trying to tear America down. It's called critical thinking, and I'll have more to say about that later on. At the university level, our video mentioned a professor at Columbia University who admitted, you come here not to be educated, but to be indoctrinated. There's another admission, more explicit in the video, the documentary, Agenda 2, Masters of Deceit. In that documentary, a community college professor tells the filmmaker, congratulations on identifying us. I am a communist. We will win because we are taking your children. The methods the left is using to take your children are insidious and despicable. Whole site reading is one of those methods. Ask yourself why. Does everyone here know what whole site reading is? It teaches reading as to recognize words as pictures instead of as phonics where you sound out the letters. The whole site method. Ask yourself why the education system deliberately uses a method guaranteed to produce bad results. Schools that teach whole site method, that teach phonics instead of whole site do better on standardized test scores. Educators have known that for decades. So why do they persist in using whole site to teach reading? And that's not the only strange thing about American education today. Common Core math reduces kids to counting dots. I'm not making this up because after I made this presentation in another place, a woman came up to me and said, "That's right, they count dots, it's Common Core." And she said, what I said was that they count dots instead of solving math problems in their head. It takes a lot longer that way and it limits their progress later on. So what sense does that make? Schools are using something called social and emotional learning. This is not out of date. I just saw a reference to this yesterday coming through an education listserv. Social and emotional learning, SEL, manipulates children's values, attitudes, beliefs, regardless of what they're taught at home. Schools are psychologically profiling your kids and steering their behavior. Why are schools trying to get inside your kids' heads? Is forcing children to conform to government-approved behavior, is that what education should really be about? Schools are teaching gender spectrum and gender fluidity and doing it at a very young age, even kindergarten. Fairfax schools think they are a national leader in this. Now I want to make one thing perfectly clear. There have always been transgender people and nobody should hate them, but why is the government deliberately setting about to create more of them? That's a completely separate question. It sounds like Stalinist Russia to me, where the government deliberately set about to create the new Soviet man with all the desired attributes of good little communists. And talk about tearing things down. Wow, if you can confuse kids about whether they're a boy or a girl, you can confuse them about anything. Finally, why have test scores remain flat while spending on education keeps going up and up? Who's benefiting? Not the students. Follow the money. Ka-ching, ka-ching. I'm amazed how many connections there are between communism and the American education system today. The pattern is very clear. I'm going to lay out some of those connections for you now, but for more documentation in detail, see the book Credentialed to Destroy by Robin Eubanks. She did all the research and it's all here in copious detail and footnotes and the whole shebang. It started with education theorist John Dewey. John Dewey was the founding father of the public education system as we know it today. He was a committed socialist who traveled to the Soviet Union to find out how communism was going there. He helped with the Humanist Manifesto, which talked about getting rid of private property and the nation state. They wanted to move toward a global brotherhood of man and communism. That was Dewey's vision. For education, this meant conditioning kids to leave religion, the free market, and individualism behind. It meant socializing and molding kids to fit into the collectivist machine. He was very explicit about how the changes he wanted would have to be introduced gradually so that they would not provoke a backlash. It was very much a case of boiling the frog slowly. Well, it's been some decades since Dewey, and it's getting pretty darn hot, don't you think? A biographer summed up what Dewey was really about, supplying the intellectual machinery for a non-totalitarian Marxism. Vladimir Lenin liked Dewey's idea so much about producing a Marxist society. He had Dewey's books translated into Russian in 1918, so Dewey's ideas could be implemented in the Soviet Union for the express purpose of helping the communists gain control over the Russian people. The Soviets returned the favor with the influential Turchenko report in 1976. It was intended to help spread the Soviet education system to socialist countries around the world. It talked about how education can, quote, be a weapon in the ideological enslavement of the masses, end quote. It spelled out how to target the entire personality, teach norms, produce desired behaviors. There's a direct line between the Turchenko report and social and emotional learning in American schools today. The report also talked about using computers in school for for psychological control and direction of the learning process. Turchenko wanted computers used in schools so teachers could be freed up to focus on the psychological control of their students. Computer-based education is a big part of what goes on in American schools today. Shortly after the Turchenko report, a woman named Charlotte Iserbyt, or Iserby, I've heard it pronounced both ways, she arrived on the scene.
Yay.
She was a senior advisor at the U.S. Department of Education under President Ronald Reagan. She stumbled across documents that outlined a plan, a deliberate plan to dumb down kids and merge the U.S. and Soviet education systems into one global system, a hybrid global system. She wrote about these documents in her book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. So it's no accident Johnny and Joni can't read or do math in their heads anymore. It's deliberate. It's no accident that so many young people say they prefer socialism over free markets. The ultimate goal is to replace America and the freedoms we enjoy here with global governance.
Did you mention her book, Charlotte's book?
Deliberate Dumbing Down of America.
Right.
I mentioned that. At about the same time, Turchenko's ideas found their way into the outcomes-based education program of the 1980s. At about the same time, they found their way into OBE and also are reflected in Common Core in public schools today. The bottom line is that Soviet techniques of psychological manipulation are in use in American public schools right now. Another connection between communism and American education is something called critical thinking. Despite what it sounds like, it's not teaching kids how to use their noodle to figure things out. It's about social inequities, studying social inequities, as Otto Warmberg did in his Global Sustainability course at UVA, and learning the supposed importance of political, social, and economic change. Change, 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 that's all the left thinks about. Critical thinking derives from critical theory, which was started by the Frankfurt School. These were Marxists who fled Nazi Germany in the 1930s, came to the United States, a lot of them settled at Columbia University, and critical theory means questioning and attacking every aspect of civilization. Tear it all down so you can replace it with socialism. Critical thinking is part of Common Core and is taught in American public schools today. And you have cultural Marxism to thank for. The last connection between communism and American education I'll talk about is group work. Now, there's always been some group work in education, but the exaggerated emphasis on group work today in schools at all levels, and I had it in grad school when I went back to grad school in the 90s, it propagates a number of communist values in one neat little package. Students are being taught how to live in a collectivized society where individuals don't matter as much as the group does. Education theorist John Goodlad talked about how the group takes precedence over individual desires and values. Collectivism is just the first value being spread through group work. Everybody in the group gets the same grade, so they're being taught that individuals and individual achievement don't matter. Equality of outcomes is what matters. We wouldn't want to discriminate because some kids are smarter than others, would we? Under this system, smart kids are punished and their smarts are expropriated and redistributed to the group. Gold workers are rewarded. The people who don't do any work, they get the same grade. And that was certainly true when I was in grad school. I had it in my own group activities. It drove me nuts. One group activity I found in my research is form a nonprofit and get a government grant to fund it. Well, you can't get more left-wing than that. Heaven forbid that it be an exercise about forming a business to bring a new product to market. That wouldn't be useful at all in the new socialist society that these people are trying to bring about, American educators. Equality of outcomes, group consciousness, attitudinal engineering, forget individual achievement, forget independent thought, forget the self, and focus on the human family. Transform education so students learn how to live and work collectively, redistribute wealth, obsess about the environment. We had two survivors of communism tell us in our video, including True, that American education sounds a lot like what they left, what they fled. That is, what the communists did in the countries they left. Obliterate history, limit reading and math skills, teach social justice. These are all communist ideas and tactics. American education theorists have written openly about them ever since Dewey. This is no secret. They want schools to transmit these values, not teach knowledge. Low test scores, anyone? To what end? Education theorist Theodore Bramell openly worshipped communist Russia, China, and Cuba. He wrote, "Revolution may be achieved," says Marx, "through legal and educational processes, a hope of the American socialist." So if you thought public schools were about teaching knowledge, they're not. They're about molding kids into taking their place in a new socialist society. Forget the 3 R's, there's only one R that matters now, revolution. Individual teachers may not know what the game is, but administrators who studied all this stuff in grad school certainly do, and the people who design what goes on in the classroom, like Common Core, they certainly know what the game is. Now, I'm going to circle back to Fairfax County Public Schools. The policy documents are on the web. You can find them. They're no secret either. The FCPS strategic plan talks about creating change, improving the planet, tackling inequality and climate change, leading school to go protest about climate change just last week, creating critical thinkers. Well, now we know what that means. Tear everything down. A more holistic approach to education that addresses students' social and emotional needs, social and emotional learning. This is psychological manipulation and political indoctrination under the guise of education. Going on to a second document, this is called the FCPS Portrait of a Graduate. It has a big section with a big bold title called Ethical and Global Citizen, with 7 priorities underneath. It's not until you get to priority number 5 that you see anything about the foundations of America and the rights and responsibilities of U.S. citizens. So they think they've checked the box by putting it on the list, but the placement way down the list shows you that their priorities are out of whack. As shown by their own rank ordering, Fairfax schools would much rather be training students to be global citizens, not American citizens, not people who know how to live in liberty. That is the meaning of the term liberal arts, learning how to live in liberty. Not people who learn how to do that, not people who know how to maintain our constitutional republic, global citizens, where all nation states, including America, are irrelevant and all borders are open borders, where everyone marches to the tune of the political left and anyone with contrary ideas is to be torn down with critical thinking. More ideological manipulation. So here's my suggestions for your school board races. I'm not suggesting that you go out and call your opponents communists or that they're using communist techniques. I don't think you get very far. But what I am suggesting, however, is that you make all these things I've talked about here today, you make them issues in your campaigns. Why are Fairfax schools deliberately trying to create more gender-confused kids with its gender spectrum and gender fluidity curriculum? Where is social engineering in the Constitution? Why are public schools getting into social and emotional learning, SEL? What business do schools have meddling with the emotional makeup of its students? Why are the schools psychologically manipulating your kids? Why are the schools indoctrinating kids about climate change and improving the planet? Why are the schools spending time teaching how to create social change and stop inequality? These are totally the wrong priorities. Why are the schools teaching kids to be global citizens when what they should be doing is teaching them how to be American citizens and how to keep our republic? For that matter, why is it better to be a global citizen in the first place than an American citizen? Explain it to me. In conclusion, I've given you some ideas, some food for thought. Your challenge is to come up with an effective approach for the school board races, whether using this framework or somebody else's. If you take up any of the ideas I've suggested, I can put you in touch with education activists around the country who would be able to help you flesh out your message and hone your approach. You've got some real insanity here in Fairfax schools, and I wish you every success in getting rid of it. I'll stop here and take questions. Questions first, comments later if there's time. How are we doing on time, Quan?
We're doing well on time. We just had Chad who needed to leave, and so time. So I will leave to the audience to ask questions, and I'll have some questions to comment afterwards.
Okay. Who'd like to go first? Questions first, comments later. Vincent.
You mentioned that the teachers are personally not aware of any agenda like this. When I'm talking to people who start getting into more of a campaign, even with educators, I feel that people feel that there is no real agenda per se, but at the same time, when you talk about equality and global citizenship, these are things that nobody can really dispute because we want to help everybody, and that is why it's happening. That's what I'm hearing. But you said that people at the higher level there is an agenda. I'm just asking, what is the proof for that agenda?
What is the proof for the agenda? It's right on the web. It's the Fairfax County Public School Strategy Document and Portrait of a Graduate. All these things that I listed are right there in public view. Things like improving the planet. Let's see if I can find this again. The agenda's there. Creating change. That's a Grace Lee Boggs thing from the left. She was a committed Marxist. Change, change, change. That's what she was about. Improving the planet, tackling inequality and climate change, creating critical thinkers. Well, now you know what critical thinking is. A more holistic approach to education that addresses students' social and emotional needs, SEL, social and emotional learning, which has a whole agenda of its own of psychological manipulation. So the proof is there. Proof's right there on the web. Strategy document and portrait of a graduate, FCPS. Yes.
As I understand, there are now two high schools have solar panels installed, and they're looking at more schools to see if they can have solar panels installed. Instead of the money, going to kids' education, the curriculum, they're looking at all these things. And I believe they're also appointing a task force to look at climate change.
Oh my God.
And I think right in their annual mission, they mentioned things. The board put down equal rights amendment as one of the things they support. I mean, this is a just very politically motivated school board. And
Well, if they want to play politics, they should be an unpaid political activist like me instead. You guys had a question?
I have another question. So, there's a movement now among the teachers' unions, Red for Ed. And I understand that there's a communist backing to that. It started with a teacher in Arizona, and he's only 24. I forgot his name, but they initially started out as a movement to call for more teachers' pay, within Arizona. And so he started organizing all these walkouts, teacher strikes. And then it started to take movement in West Virginia, Oakland, exactly, Los Angeles, Chicago. And of course, the teachers wanted to stand up for their rights, or their benefits. But this backing is what's driving them. I mean, I don't know whether they're knowingly come along with this movement, or they're, because they're collaborating with them, or they're, part of it.
Well, a lot of efforts like that. I've noticed on the left, the rank and file don't really understand what's going on, but the leaders are committed communists.
Yes.
Right.
And it's all kept all hidden. I also saw that Red for Ed did a rally in Richmond.
Right.
And they've got a real problem because Virginia just did Medicaid expansion, and it hasn't blown up here yet because it's barely underway. But Medicaid expansion has blown up in every state that it's been implemented in. So you're going to see, before too long, before 2 or 3 more years, you're going to see a real collision between education activists in Virginia and the Medicaid expansion. It's coming. That's a big fight that's coming.
And they, when I came to one of the school board meetings to discuss about the budget for the coming year, there were representatives from Red for Ed, the teachers' representatives, who came to the forum, and they stood up and they all said, we needed more pay, we need to make sure we have benefits, etc. And as we saw from Arthur's lecture today, I mean, it's
Very well paid, right?
yeah, they're very well paid. So they really are, rooting for their races, and so just so you know, they're out there. And
Yes, sir.
So why do you think it's a concern that we are trying to make global citizens? What is your concern, and why do you think it's an indication of making people more socialistic? More socialistic? Why do you think it's a symptom of creeping socialism in the education system?
Why is global citizenship
It's a concern.
socialistic?
Yeah.
The New World Order.
Well, it's the destruction
Well,
of
my
nations.
answer would be,
Which is the Marxist.
America is a special
The
place.
definition
It's
of
founded
Marxism.
on an idea, but ideas can be attacked, ideas can be subverted. So what we have to do is draw a fortress around the American idea. And if you can attack the American idea and say American citizenship isn't worth a plug nickel, but let's replace it with global citizenship, then you can destroy the American idea. That's one of the things they're using to attack it. And as I mentioned, I believe the ultimate goal of all of that is to replace the American idea and the free market and all of the ordering principles that we've had in American society so far, replace it with socialism. If you've studied the left for 50 years like I have, that's the game, that's what they're up to.
And when you say global citizenship, what exactly? Is it in the literal sense or is it like an ideology?
Well, that's a good question. What is a global citizen? Somebody whose allegiance is not to the United States, somebody whose allegiance is to, say, for example, the United Nations, and wouldn't think twice about the United Nations taking away gun rights, taking away free speech rights, implementing independent taxation of its own. That's
Have you
where
heard
a
of
global
New
citizen
World
would,
Order?
that's where it would go.
That's where we're going. One government controlling the whole world. That's why you need global citizens.
This is probably gonna be China, because the One Belt, One Road, they're building everywhere, you know, they're buying up land in every
Yes,
country.
they are.
They're buying ports, you know, they're bribing the government, local governments, you know, they put the local governments in debt to them, so that whenever they wanted to send ships down, you know, to the countries, they can. And they're like in Vietnam, for instance, where I originally came from Vietnam. They're buying up land in Vietnam. You know, Vietnam was dominated by China for 1,000 years. We were colonized by China for 1,000 years until heroes and heroines stood up finally and kicked them out and drove them out. But now they're coming back without a drop of blood. They're buying up land in Vietnam. And
They're doing it in South America too.
They're right. They're making it, you know, they're building villages, they're building resorts. And America has no idea. I mean, we're, you know, it's all about
Very
money right now.
naive.
They're
Americans
naive.
are very
And they
naive.
think that Vietnam is...
Something my father used to say,
Right.
who grew up under communism
Exactly.
in USSR.
Right, and China's taking over. And we're not standing up to China now. We will lose.
Except Trump,
We
yeah.
will become Chinese. I'm telling you. You know, this global citizenship, I am seeing that now with my, I'm a Cub Scout leader. I'm a Cub Master of a local Cub Scout pack. One of my girl scouts.
No, Girl Cub Scout.
Girl Cub Scouts.
It's,
Girl Cub Scouts, right. My girl Cub Scouts. When we talked about what does the Pledge of Allegiance means, we asked her, I mean, you know, every kid, we gave an assignment. You're supposed to write down what is your country and what does the Pledge of Allegiance means to you. She wrote down, my country is where I am. It could be anywhere in the world.
Oh,
That's global citizenship.
whoa.
And they're infiltrating now. I mean, the kids are now being brainwashed. They don't stand up to America. They're not standing up to their own, you know, American rights. They're going to lose these rights. And, you know, this is why we're trying to make sure that, you know, they understand that they have something that's very precious. That's America. There's nowhere in the world that has that's like this, you know?
Can I give a small remark about the difference between, from the way I am seeing it? The global citizenship agenda is definitely talking big government, a huge government. The American agenda, American ideas, it's the smallest government possible. And if at all we have to have a government, that should be stronger at the local level, not at the federal level.
Right.
And that is what gives us the freedom of doing whatever we want to do. I still remember the lines that I had to stand for getting palm oil, for kerosene, for sugar, for rice, in front of ration shops controlled by the government. So at the end of the line, there is a government guy sitting. So the free market is totally opposite. We don't have to worry about government. So when I talk, when I go to India, when people talk about what is the difference that you talk about, capitalism versus socialism, this is what I say. In America, we are dependent on the government for like maybe 20-25% of our life. Whereas in India, we are dependent on the government for about 65, 70, 80% of our life. And that means government is inefficient everywhere. Government is the same everywhere, in my definition. They're inefficient, they're wasting money unnecessarily, they're a necessary evil. So if you have bigger governments, that means the whole system is going down that road. So American ideal is to have the least possible size of the government. And the global agenda is definitely going much bigger than India and China, all three. That's where the problem is, because it's bringing inefficiency right there. It's not going to work. Everybody has to stand in line. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
Isn't the idea also to remove the control from our sovereign rights as deciding how we run our country eventually, and allow one global government, like the EU is doing in Europe, which they wanted to do it in every state. I mean, it's similar to that. That's what the global citizenship is teaching. It's that one central state, and our nation will be part of one, and then so we're going to lose our decisions, our sovereignty.
And guess what? Why do you think there's a push to have a constitutional convention by people like Mark Levin, Tom Coburn, a whole bunch of others, the Convention of States,
Right.
because government is out of control. Now, Tom DeWeese, expert at the UN Agenda 21, said, in order for UN Agenda 21, which is now 2030, because they didn't achieve their goal by 20, so it's 2030, that's, when 12 years that world ends. He said, in order for UN Agenda 21 to become effective, they have to change the Constitution. You see, people are not connecting the dots. They're listening to individual people, experts, like Mark Levin, who's supposedly a constitutionalist. He's not. He pretends to be, though. They're trying to change, not just change, but replace our Constitution.
Right.
They have to replace the Constitution for all this New World Order, UN Agenda 21, all of this to come together.
Right.
Our Constitution, if we lose that, we lose everything. But the goal is to lose it through a convention, which is what's going to happen.
And that's when you can start through public school, the public school education system, making sure that when they're ready to vote, they vote that way.
Well, I don't have to make the case here today that there's a new world order. I don't have to make the case that the United Nations and people want that to take over the whole world. The only case I have to make here is that they are subverting what we started with, the America's founding principles. They're deliberately doing it, and one of their end goals is to impose socialism in America. Take control of America. So that's the only case I have to make.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Can I just make a comment? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
As a primary school teacher, I was an early childhood education major at JMU, which was Madison College at the time. And I was a new teacher in 1973 in Loudoun County. And there was a lady that I admired greatly. She was a first grade teacher. And she would have 30-minute phonics lessons every day. And I wanted to sit in on some of those. And I did. When my students weren't there, I would sit in on some of those. I started practicing some of her ways. And she'd been teaching for many years, whereas I was brand new. And I like learning from really good people. The next thing, 1 year later she left because they didn't want us teaching phonics anymore in the schools, which you brought up, Chris. I didn't equate it at the time because as a teacher, you're so focused on the students, the curricula. I never knew what a conservative was, a liberal. I wasn't concerned about politics. I didn't participate in politics until Obama became a candidate. And all these red flags went up because I grew up around people who all lived under communism and escaped it one way or another. Most of them from Soviet Union, like my father did. But my father was a Soviet soldier who left. That was his way out. As a teacher, I have to tell you, most teachers have no idea any of this is going on because the seminars, the in-services that we get, we just believe that, yeah, they're trying to make things better. But I didn't know this, I had to learn it the hard way when I got involved in issues in politics. none of us knew that the NEA, the LEA, the VEA were communist propaganda or socialist propaganda. Yet we belonged to them because that's what we thought we had to do,
Just like Red Cross.
to support our educators. And in case anybody tried to sue us, of course, they would, cover us with attorneys. But most teachers have no idea what the ultimate agenda is. Next thing that happened, phonics first. Then they took away the spelling books, were the first textbook to go. Why? Why are they taking, that's where we learn our phonics. The lists of sight words, there's so much good grammar there. Then they wanted to take away the English books, do this whole language. Why? I refused. Luckily, I taught with a principal all 30 years of my career. As long as we got good test results, he didn't interfere with what we were doing. He just shut the door. Then they brought in, then they wanted to take away our math books. They took away the math books, folks. Brought in programs. That was the year after I retired. But as teachers, none of us really understood that these were bad things, except for me. Red flags would go off all the time. I said, I'm not doing this. I told my team, I'm not doing this. The only thing my team agreed on, the third grade teachers and I, we were not going to do the family life education, because we didn't think the 8-year-olds needed to hear some of this stuff at that time. But what we did agree on is that we would do one aspect of it. And that was the good touch and that.
I don't want to interrupt you, but we have the next topic that will cover exactly what you're about to say.
Exactly.
So
Very good.
let's just wrap this up.
But well, my point was, they keep bringing these things in, teachers have no idea what it means. That this is the ultimate goal. That was my.
Do you think that Red for Ed falls along this line too?
I'm not sure, I don't know
Unions?
enough about it.
Okay.
Because we don't have unions in Virginia, we have education associations.
The same
But
as
they're-
union.
they're
We're not unionized.
Oh, not union, but there was a student union.
They're strong.
Yeah, they're strong. I know.
All right, so to close out this topic, I want to end with this. The FCPS policy on the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was curious, when this policy started to take effect, and I went back as far as 2016, 2017, I couldn't get any further than that. So this is what we have regarding the policy. Says here that students are expected to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. However, if he objects to participation in such exercises, then he's expected to sit quietly during the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'd like to ask Chris, the intention in this policy within the context of what you've been talking about.
I think it's very clear. Anything to get people to take their hands off the wheel of American principles. So if you can attack it from any direction, that's what they do.
Sure.
You can water down having to say the Pledge of Allegiance. It all fits the pattern. It's all part of the same ball of wax.
I think there was a teacher that was
I-
reprimanded.
Well, not just reprimanded.
Right? So he was fined.
December 2017, Centralville High School. I don't know if you follow that that story. 35 years teacher. This is that issue. The kid refused to stand up to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. The teacher removed him from the classroom and asked him to stand outside while the rest of the classroom recite the Pledge of Allegiance. That infuriated the family. The school backed them up, saying that the teacher violated this policy and fired him. 35 years of teaching. So,
Did it come, this
Which
this
company was
policy
this?
before that event?
Centerville High School.
December 2017.
Okay, so this
Okay,
happened-
so this
It has been
was
a-
already in effect.
It's part of doing away with the simulation.
Okay, let me see what else. I'll just leave it at that. Very disturbing. Kids are encouraged, not to show respect to the American flag
not to recite
Disrespect.
the Pledge of Allegiance to this country.
They watch the NFL and you think it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay? So where is their allegiance? Chris has already mentioned that. Very disturbing.
The last thing I'll say about it, it's great for people to exercise their free speech rights, but after this whole process that I've described to you here today, I hope they have a country left within which to exercise their free speech rights.
I think so.
Amen.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.